Podcast, a podcast about the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
Welcome, young adventurers. Dylan here. And on today's podcast, we have two special guests, Marcus Howard and his daughter, Maddie. He is 14 years consecutive as strategic tactical experience with building startups in various industries, including gaming, news, media, and restaurants. He specializes in identifying exponential growth opportunities, don't know if I can say that word, and converging trends in consumer markets. Also, he excels at creating and executing blue ocean strategies. He's a growth hacker, an innovator, a techie, and a leader. And I'm here to welcome Marcus Howard. Hey,
Dylan, how's it going, man?
Very good, man. How you two doing today?
We're good. Maddie's up past her bedtime, but I don't think she's complaining. At least not yet.
Oh, good. Well, I'll try not to bore her too much, you know?
Don't push buttons.
No. Hey, guys. So I'd love to talk to you. I see that your middle name is Esports. So I would love to dive into what are your thoughts around esports and what do you think it really represents to the community as a whole?
This is an unpopular opinion. It's actually a very unpopular opinion, but I think that esports is a bubble right now. And that doesn't mean that esports aren't significant to the culture, to the business ecosystem. Yes, that's a spit bubble. Thank you. But the valuations are way out of whack. Just like you saw with .com companies back in, turn of the century with year 2000, or millennium rather, year 2000, just like you saw with the housing market before 2008, Bitcoin 3 or 4 years ago. But that said, I think that it's going to long-term, fundamentally evolve the entertainment industry. So music, film, sports, obviously, it's here to stay. But I do believe that the valuations are way out of whack, and we're due for a correction.
Now, do you think if you look at it like what esports has been doing, it's pretty much taken over, say, Vegas and other forms of entertainment because a lot of the younger people, they don't want to go for, it's the younger generation's version of baseball or soccer, football. So do you feel like the evaluations are out of whack, and this is kind of like the same bubble that like virtual reality went through, where there was like this big rise? And then is it in the trough of disillusionment, that phase right now? Do you think it's going to drop into that thing? And then how do you think the timeline's going to look like for the next couple of years with esports?
Okay. Let me answer that. But first, Maddie wants me to tell you about Blob Game. She's really excited about it.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about Blob Game?
Tell me about the Blob Game.
Oh, you don't want to tell them?
No.
Okay. Looks like you're getting sleepy. So yeah, I think we're getting in the trough of disillusionment. And I think COVID actually accelerated that. Look, she's getting there. Yeah. But you're right. I think that it will evolve, especially kind of the gambling lottery space. I went to Vegas for the first time last year, early in the year for CES. It was in Vegas, and all I saw were slot machines. And the experience looked redundant and boring. But I think what esports gives you is a combination of luck-based and skill-based games. She's meditating. It's darker outside? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can say that.
So the redundancy of the esports games, or what you're saying is that the Vegas was very, very boring because it's using the same old tricks, the same old slot mechanics and things like that. But young kids, they don't want to spend money to put a nickel in a machine. They want to compete. They want to use skills. They want to, it's so much more. If you compare like League of Legends, for example, to a slot machine, it's so different. Do you feel like in terms of the betting areas when it comes to that, how do you feel it's going to integrate with cryptocurrency, or like how do you think it's going to affect the whole betting industry in terms of with esports?
I see cryptocurrency already integrating into esports. There's a platform called bmarket.io that lets you do a number of things, including buy skins and bet them, wage them on games. Mm-hmm. And I think cryptocurrencies will give more value to things like skins, characters, those digital assets. Mm-hmm. The same way you might have value in like a pink slip for a car, right? It's something for racing purposes. So it adds that extra value in and gives it more real world legitimacy for the gambling ecosystem.
Yeah. Have you seen NFTs pop into the whole esports space?
I have. I describe it as two converging bubbles. NFTs are a bubble as well. It reminds me, again, I've been in the crypto blockchain space since 2013, and there was a bubble for ICOs, initial coin offerings. That was where basically, just like you would go public on a stock exchange, you do that with a cryptocurrency. And we're seeing that now with NFTs because so many people are trying to NFT this and NFT that. Like you can NFT a picture of this can, right, and then try to sell it for $500. I've seen two well-known popular teams go the NFT route so far, and I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. I already told about that.
So if we're looking at the NFT space, it seems like the NFT is all around this kind of mock value of like I'm looking to create these images and create a value in the ecosystem. Do you feel like there is an opportunity for real value to come from the NFT and the crypto space or and the esports space, or is it all vaporware?
Well, to be fair, the U.S. dollar is vaporware, right? We dropped the gold standard in 1971, so it's just it's a social contract that we give these sheets of paper or fabric any kind of actual value. Same thing with gold and diamonds. There's diamonds. You can get diamonds and spades, right? But because of the perceived value, they're expensive. That said, I think NFTs, the most valuable NFTs will represent something in real life because people understand those paradigms. So like the reason that NBA Top Shot is doing well, she wants me to tell you about the ball. It's one of the objects that you can turn into in the blob game. Okay, so the NBA Top Shot mirrors the traditional card trading or trading card, sports card trading market, memorabilia market. So that's why people can associate some kind of value to it. Whereas there's like no tangible relative value to Snoop Dogg selling like digital blunts, right? He's doing that now. He did it a couple weeks ago. So I think you'll start to see that across industries where people are tying them to real assets. I actually saw IBM announce they're doing NFTs for patents. Stop that. NFTs for patents. That has real world value.
Oh, wow.
You can relate to that. You can do that for business contracts, whatever. Those have value. But these other things, people are just trying to cash in on a trend. And I think a lot of people are going to get burned in the process.
That makes a lot of sense. So then talk to me a bit about your role in the whole esports arena. Well, in esports in general.
What I'm trying to do is make esports sustainable. Again, I believe it's a bubble. I think people are just cashing in on the hype. But right now, the revenue isn't sustainable. If you look at the top 10 esports companies, I don't think any of them are profitable. One or two of them might be. I even saw 2 weeks ago a very popular organization that owns an esports team, Enthusiast Gaming, was already listed on the stock exchange for Canada. They just recently listed on the NASDAQ. So they're required to publish their financials. And when you go and look at it, they had a $22 million, $30 million operating loss and like 22 out of $30 million of their long-term debt. They had a $22 million balance on $30 million of debt. So if they're public and they can't figure it out, and these younger companies are operating at a massive loss and they can't figure it out, where's the ecosystem going? So what I'm doing is trying to bring in more players, more brands, more games, so that it can be as successful as the gaming industry. Because esports right now is $1 billion market, but the gaming industry is $175 billion market.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So it's adding real value by bringing in real players into the space. Nice. Do you do anything around virtual reality in esports at all? Have you looked at that at all, or is that what's your relation and opinions about that?
I'm trying to work on an augmented reality esports opportunity. I can't mention it in too much detail because every time I do that, it's not even my business partners, it's through another business partner. His international business partners get upset with me using those terms. And I'm trying not to sour the deal for him. So I'll just leave it at that. Yes, I am looking at some augmented reality esports opportunities, but unfortunately I can't talk about it in detail.
That's fair. Yes. Yeah. The bleeding edge deals. Maybe we can revisit it after it goes through and.
We can have a follow-up episode for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So one of the things I saw that you were talking about that I noticed a little bit away from esports is you talked about Roblox being the future of education, right? I saw a mentioning about that a bit. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about, because not a lot of people that aren't teenagers and younger know what Roblox is even, and what it means, and the actual size and scope of what it is. So can you explain a little bit what your thoughts around that and being the future of education?
Sure, and let me clarify. The person who wrote the article said that Roblox is the future of education. I believe that gaming is the future of education. I don't necessarily believe that Roblox as a company is, but what they represent, creating gamified ecosystems and metaverses where you can teach content in a way that's more relevant to students. I think that is the future of education. Microsoft, is getting there with Minecraft. Roblox isn't quite there or even close, but I think that it makes sense if 97% of kids between the ages of 12 and 17 play video games. They would most relate to subjects being taught from the perspective of gaming and esports.
Who's the 3% that doesn't play video games? That's what I want to know.
Maybe they don't have internet.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so education or entertainment and education seem to be coming together in one system. So that makes a lot of sense. What do you think is, in terms of on the path, what do you think are some of the roadblocks or guardians stopping the adoption of gaming being the next gen for education?
I think it's an old philosophy. When I was in the 9th grade, my brother and I, we were in magnet school, and so the school required us to get TI-83 plus graphing calculators if we were taking pre-calculus or trigonometry leading up to pre-calculus and calculus in high school. And we learned that you could put video games on these things, basically turn it into a Game Boy, Tetris and Mario, things like that. And we actually started building our own game. We were making a Zelda game on the calculator, and while we were at lunch, our trigonometry teacher deleted the games off the calculator because we had taught everyone else in class how to put games on their calculators, and no one was listening to the teacher.
But you know what? That to me just sounds like market demand. That's what that is right there. The true innovation. So you've been doing, that's technically code. Have you and you're still coding to these days? Is that yeah?
I've been a professional software developer for about 15 years now.
That's awesome. What languages do you write in?
Right now, Java, JavaScript, and I used to do a lot of Python, but my day job now is very Java heavy. So where before the previous, 7 years ago, it was heavy JavaScript and Python, and now it's still JavaScript, but also Java instead of Python.
Yeah. A lot of times, especially, it's great to learn languages and keep so sharp off to the company's dime, right? Because it's a progress. It's like, and then you kind of push them into areas like, oh, I want to learn Swift or whatever the thing might be. And you can kind of move in that direction. That's great. Yeah. Is there a with that and all together? Have you seen good things around coding and gaming for kids? And speaking of that whole thing, is there things about that excites you?
Yeah, the one thing I'm most excited about is a platform called Code Combat, CODECOMBAT. And it's basically a video game where instead of you using a controller to move your character around and attack and cast spells, you have to type in lines of code. So it's like Dylan walk left, and you pass it the number 5 to make your character walk left 5 spaces.
That's cool. I feel the need that someone's going to cheat and throw in macros in there. Some sort of just copy and paste all these commands in, they can World of Warcraft style. That's cool. That's super cool. Man.
Yes, how can I help you? Mommy wants you to go to bed because it's nighttime.
Where are you guys calling in from?
We're about an hour south of Tampa in Ellington. So Tampa Bay, sorry.
Tampa Bay. Okay, so you are, it is a couple hours better.
Yeah. I'm required to call it Tampa Bay now for the next sports season.
That's awesome, man. So with what about in terms of esports? Do you have a favorite esports game that you like to play or something that you're really excited about?
The one I'm really excited about hasn't come out yet. It actually comes out 4 weeks from this Friday, basically, May 21st. It's called Knockout City, and it's essentially dodgeball plus Street Fighter plus NBA Jam.
Woo! That sounds
It's
fun.
cool. It's easy to pick up.
Yeah.
You can play the game with only 2 buttons, but in order to be competitive, you have to learn the entire controller.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, so that means anybody can button mash on those 2, but then if you want to level up your skills, you can expand outwards, which is great. Sometimes it gets really overwhelming, to try to show your grandma, World of Warcraft kind of button schemes or Call of Duty, they get overwhelmed. So then that's incredible. So is that on Steam or is that on what's that coming out on?
It's all platforms. It's
platforms.
I think the purest form of Crossblade that we've seen to date in the ecosystem. So you can get it on Steam, the Epic Game Store, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and Xbox One, S, and X.
Dang, that's cool.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about one of the biggest challenges with the esports area is actually building a community, having enough players inside the ecosystem that you can actually create actual value. So like needing to launch from the whole area. Do you have thoughts, especially being in the space, on how people that are creating esports games actually are able to build enough of a community around a thing that it actually makes it valuable?
Yeah, the answer is community, right? The ones that survive have strong communities. The ones that suffer have weak or toxic communities. And I've never really followed Overwatch, but from all of my friends who are heavy players in the space, that's the general sentiment of Overwatch, is that it has a toxic community. And because of that, it's not the game it was 3 years ago.
What do you think causes the whole toxic community thing?
Internet anonymity doesn't help. But it's also the competitive scene, right? Because everybody wants to be the top player, and it's about the culture, right? It's what you incentivize in the game determines how people's behavior shift. You want to know about the green jelly bean? When you feed it to the blob, he turns into basically a jack, a card jack, and you can lift objects and knock over objects with the card jack.
That's cool. We're getting announcer show notes from the blob game on things that you can do with it. What is it called? The boy and the blob? Boy and his blob.
A boy and his blob, yeah.
Yeah. We're having a shameless plug for the boy and blob. Go out and buy it today. $9.95 in the store.
Yeah, actually, I haven't bought a game in years. I now use PlayStation Now, so I pay them $5 a month, and I get access to their entire library. That way, like if I'm too busy, because I'm very busy, if I'm too busy to play a game, it's only $5, and if I only put in like 5 hours in a month, I only pay I pay $5. It doesn't feel like I cheated myself out of my own money. Yeah,
that's a good spend. We got John Watts here making comments in the system, asking any chance if we could link that article. John, what article are you talking about? Are you talking about? Do you know what article John's talking about?
He's talking about robots and future of education. If you give me a second, I'll go pull it up off of LinkedIn. Can I respond to that in the chat here?
You can. Yeah, there's a chat down there. You can link it in there if you copy and paste it over.
I'll copy and paste it over.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into this, and feel free to link that when you get a chance. And anybody that's listening, feel free to comment, and we'll try to answer to the best of our ability. In terms of toxic cultures, what was that, darling? She wants a what? I can't hear her.
You
want a picture?
The one with the picture?
No, the TV one with the white.
The TV with the picture? I don't know what you're talking about, man.
No, this one get the thing. It was like a robot.
It was like a robot?
Yeah, the robot was and we played yesterday.
The one we played yesterday?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I follow you, because whenever you say yesterday, you may be talking about like 3 months ago or last year.
Oh.
Okay, we can play it later. Okay?
No, not
Not the vlog game? Which one? Here. Give me just a second. I'm gonna go put her down. I know we're in the middle of a podcast.
I'll do a little monologue while you go and do that.
Okay. In the meantime, here is the article.
Cool. We'll put that in there.
Here we go.
Perfect. Thanks, Marcus. Maddie, it was a pleasure, darling. Have a good night, okay? She reminds me of my niece.
So I'm gonna run for a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. We'll see in a hot second. John, I'm dropping this article in there for you. Let me know if you got that, John. I'm not too sure if you did or didn't. I'm gonna throw that over to you. I think that's inside the Facebook. So, yeah, what we're talking about here is awesome, guys. This is actually a new linking feature. I don't do the chat too much through the system, so if it works, give me thumbs up. Let me know that's awesome. Looks like you got it, so that's great. Yeah, I mean, what's super interesting here in the area of esports is this toxicity bit. Like, toxicity is a big problem in the space. If you look at the whole gaming culture online, someone who was a part of the podcast a little while ago, she said something to me that totally resonated. She said that gamers are the new gangs. If you think about it, it's like, what were gangs? Gangs were groups of kids or people that had nothing else to do, that were hanging out in the streets, and they would just cause mayhem. That's not as prevalent now when kids can go online. So that whole same kind of like dominant chimpanzee destruction vibe thing that was going on in the streets is actually happening online. And so much like how kids, when you send them to school, are being raised by other kids, when you send kids into the game centers, they actually get raised by other kids, which causes the whole gang-like vibe, this whole toxic vibe to happen inside these esports arenas. And so one of the things that I'm super interested in, and Marcus, I'd love you to kind of talk a little bit about this, is like, are there ways, is it possible to remove toxicity from games? Is there a way to create a game that is both competitive and kind? Is that a possibility? Or do you think it's like you have to create these cultures, or is there something, or have you seen anybody that's been able to successfully do something like that?
That's an interesting question. I have not seen it done perfectly yet. The one that I've seen had the most success, and she's back. Maddie, stop that. Stop. It's too loud. Had the most success is Riot Games with League of Legends. They have a system, and they're actually on a podcast for NPR, How I Built This, where they talk about their system. Basically, whenever someone gets like reported for doing something that's has a negative impact on other players, swearing at them or derogatory terms, which I guess is also swearing, but just general bad behavior, they get some kind of system notification that pops up and says, hey, this isn't something that you should be doing. It negatively impacts the community. And based on that interview, they said like the majority of people, when they get that notification, they stop exhibiting that particular negative behavior because they don't intend to be toxic. Some people are just doing it out of anger, out of the passion, the intense emotion in the middle of the game. You lose a game and it might be your fault. You don't want to admit it's your fault, so you blame someone else, or it's someone else's legitimate fault.
Yeah, that's a good move. I'll check out that podcast for sure. It's one of the things I'm super interested in, because like I don't necessarily believe that it has to be toxic. It just kind of evolved into this whole thing. I know like one of the OG original esports games back in the day was Doom, and they kind of created a bit of a toxic culture where they would just talk smack on people as you play, but that was kind of their culture, and that kind of spread, and I felt like that kind of created the genesis for this whole like toxicity. So I'll check that out on that one. Are there other games that you've seen that you like their cultures or overall gaming things besides the mechanics that you actually enjoy?
I haven't had time to play a lot of games. Again, I work a 9 to 5 job. I've got my daughter who's 4, my son's 2.5. Stop it. To take care of, and then growing my company and my nonprofit. So I don't play a lot of games, and so I wish I had more experience to offer that to you, more insights there. But the only game that I've really played that I like so far is Knockout City, and its culture, its community is young. It's been through 2 betas. The game launches in 4 weeks, so hopefully they can get it right out the gate and monitor it and nurture it.
Yeah. So then being being a strategist in this space, do you have a framework or a process for looking at blue ocean opportunities? Is there a way that you try to take complex data and make it more simple? Because really strategy is being able to kind of see. John says he knows the feeling with having kids. John, does your kids do the same thing? Is that what's going on, bud? Yeah. John actually runs a VR-cade over in the Highlands of Scotland. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I've seen him. So check out his arcade. But with blue ocean opportunities, like, and things like that, like, do you have a process or thought things around strategizing?
Well, the first thing I did was I read the book called Blue Ocean Strategies. All right, so I didn't come up with that term, but there's a book. It's by, I think, some Harvard professors. Maddie, I'm on a meeting. Can you see I'm in a meeting with Dylan? Don't be rude. So I read that book, and that helped me understand what blue oceans look like. But generally speaking, it's understanding where trends are going and forecast that trend out. For example, there are roughly 6 or 7 billion people around the world who have mobile devices, right? Mm. And the gaming industry is about 3 billion people. So you look at the gap there, like naturally the biggest gap will be getting more people who have access to the internet and games and apps via mobile devices into gaming. And that's why if you look at the trend, that's actually the biggest growth opportunity in the larger gaming industry, not just esports. Even before the pandemic hit, this was a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was projected by the end of 2021, 60% of the industry's revenue would be from mobile games. Man, stop it.
That's hardcore.
Go get some food. Listen, maybe some oatmeal. There's still oatmeal on the table. Can you go get your oatmeal, please? No, you asked me to make you oatmeal that's on the table. Go get some oatmeal, please.
I got a 6-year-old niece, man. I visited her for like a month, and it was like I have a lot of respect for my brother, and just the sheer patience.
That's what it is.
But you love them. You love them. You get this like you're like, oh, but you're like, oh, I'm gonna miss you. And so
I'm gonna miss you. You love them so much more because you get to come back later.
So cute. So looking at that and looking at the size and the scope for what's coming up for esports, how do you like what are there any new technologies, new things coming out that really excites you that's going to merge in with things like esports that you're kind of you're positioning? I know you talked a little bit about augmented reality, but we can leave that off the table for known reasons. Is there other ways? Is there other technologies or things on the horizon that's exciting you about the whole esports industry?
This isn't necessarily a technology so much as it is an opportunity, and I think it's bringing non-endemic brands into the space. So if you look at the top 10 games for the last 2 years, esports, and this is by prize pool, not necessarily by player count, 60% of them were either had guns in them or were rated mature. So Call of Duty, Rainbow Six The Siege, Halo's not on that list, but not Call of Duty, CSGO, things of that nature. And then correlate that with the amount of money being spent on advertising for millennial and Gen Z in gaming is $1.5 billion versus that same amount of money, that same spend for the TV market is $60 billion. So I think a blue ocean opportunity is that these brands don't want to be associated with the violence and guns of games like Mortal Kombat or Call of Duty. And not because violent games lead to school shootings and violence in real life. Actually, all the research suggests the opposite, right? The other way. Suggests otherwise. But the perception is that violent games lead to violence in real life. So the major opportunity here is how do you get these brands that are apprehensive about being in gaming and esports into the space? Whoever figures that out is going to be the next Yahoo, at the turn of the century.
Got it. Well, it's so funny because that was going to be my next question: is how does the company position themselves for these we'll call it family friendly brands? And because you're right, I mean, there's since Doom, it's been guns and shotguns and all that other stuff that you probably don't want to expose your kid to for obvious reasons. I don't think it's necessarily shootings and all that, but just the priming of the brain. What do you like? Is there a way that a recommendation that you would give to people that are creating these types of games in order to position themselves best to leverage this opportunity?
I think look at past examples and just try to model off of what is family friendly. And a great example is actually like Nintendo, right? Nintendo made it very popular to have family friendly games. But you look at, for example, a huge hit last year was Among Us. It had 217 million installs last year during the pandemic. And one of those reasons was because it was on mobile, right? To go back to the mobile point. But the other reason was it was generally family friendly. Now, yes, you do kill each other, right? But it's not realistic violence like you see on Call of Duty or CSGO. And in my opinion, it actually mirrors a classic board game called Clue.
Oh, you're right. Please continue though.
Yeah, no, and so I think that there's a great, if you want a cheat sheet for amazing games, just go recreate a digital version of all these old board games. Because parents will immediately get it. My parents would immediately get it.
If that's a great way to bring someone into the fold for Among Us. You're like, hey, look, this is like Clue in space, Yeah. And they're like, oh, I got it. Who did it? Yeah,
right.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, and Among Us is it's this whole kind of social battle of wits where you're it feels very tribal, but there's a betrayer in the tribe, and then all this suspicion builds, and then you got to figure out who did what. I haven't played it as much. It's a cool game. There's just something in me that doesn't want to be suspicious of my friends. You know what I'm saying? There's this little thing because I might take it a little too personal. How dare you push me out of the airlock?
Yeah,
that's cool. But you're right. There is a very much how Hollywood goes and takes old repurposed films and goes, you know what we need? Let's bring back Superman or Spider-Man or any of those other things and bring it over again and again. It looks like a cheat sheet would be a good trick to look at old successful board games. Are there? Let me ask you: Do you have old favorite board games that you used to play that you think is ripe for that kind of thing? Is there?
I would say Risk, and I have a love-hate relationship with Risk because it takes 6 hours to beat. Right? It's just you have to book an entire day to play that game. But the level of strategy is it's almost like chess.
Yeah.
It's like Dungeons and Dragons plus chess.
Yeah.
We're talking to you and they can't hear me because you're screaming. Okay.
No, I'm the police car.
Okay.
So then looking at that, what you might be able to do if you take a game like Risk, you might be able to do something where it's asynchronous at a time type of thing. You make a move like chess with your friends, you wait and you make a move. That might be the way to tackle that one, because you're right. It was more not a game of strategy but endurance. Are you willing to play the game long enough before you want to rage quit?
Yeah. Well, and another great example of again family friendly that did it amazingly last year was Fall Guys, right? They basically took the Fortnite concept, which was obviously proven to be a success, and then they removed all the guns and violence out of it. But it's still basically a battle royale. And it exploded. And then they got acquired.
Yep. They built it up. And with Fortnite, they built it up, and then they made the mistake of trying to cut out Apple out of making money. And then Apple straight shut them down hard. Not only that, Apple then was like, you know what might be a good idea? Epic Games, you guys made a thing called Unreal. We're going to try to not allow Unreal to go on any iOS platform. Which is that was a poking the bear kind of move right there. And so that's a really interesting lesson. Do you feel like the ecosystem, like Apple, is always going to remain dominant like that? Or do you think they're going to continue on in that space? Or do you think we're going to be able to break away from those types of closed environmentals, giving my cut. How do you think that might play out?
That's one of the things that got me really excited about blockchain was the ability to decentralize ecosystems from any one person or company or government, right? The problem is that Apple owns this closed ecosystem, so you have to play by their rules. Now, I'm not saying that Epic was in the right? They tried to basically skirt the rules or circumvent the rules. But if it was an open ecosystem, it would allow for more innovation. Closed ecosystems just deny innovation because there are limits to what you can and can't do. Yeah. The concept what they were trying to introduce, I thought was clever, but it violated the terms and service.
Yeah.
And NAC is clever too.
Yeah.
Play that old game, NAC. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, NAC. I thought you were talking about Nock from, was it Minecraft? Who had Minecraft originally? What's his name? The guy who created Minecraft?
Notch, yeah.
Yeah, Notch. Yeah. I was like, it's clever. He sold to Microsoft.
Yeah.
He's like,
that's an indie game, right? That's another game that went from indie to mainstream, just like, again, Fall Guys and Among Us, all indie games.
Yeah. I mean, there's still, all of my nieces and nephews play Minecraft. Like, it's just a thing. And they range from like 18 to like 6. So it's like, you can see it's, there's this interesting thing of world building that kids like to do, where it's like, you kind of give them the sandbox of stuff. And it seemed like the closest one who does world building in esports was Fortnite. Is there an esports for Minecraft? Is there an esports for any of this, like Roblox or any of that stuff? Is there? Do you know? I don't know.
There's not like a major scene, but there are minor circuits, right? People will play because you have that ability. I don't know why I'm eating this lettuce. You have that ability to create your own world. People will build up like these little like tower defense or king of the hill environments, and then once you have the space, you set up your rules because people are able to like build their own worlds. They can code the rules in and then run these competitive games. So yes, there is a competitive circuit per se, but it's not something you don't have people competing for millions of dollars like you have, Dota 2 or Fortnite.
It's just a lot more robust system. What's crazy to me is like, I remember being a teenager going to like a Wizards cafe playing CSGO, and it's still going on today. Like these games, a lot of them been around for a while, that they've kind of just matured as we've gotten older. And so I could see why the younger generations of those Minecrafty games, it's not so popular. Do you think there's, for kids that want to get into like esports and things like that, are there other opportunities besides just being an esports gamer that's like they can get into? Like, is that the only path, or is there other ways to really get involved in the whole ecosystem?
So that's one of the other things that I do with my company is primarily and predominantly education. And it's educating teachers and parents and students that competitive play and content creation are drops in the bucket to the career opportunities in the gaming and esports industry, just like esports is only 0.5% of the larger gaming industry. There are over 100 STEAM career opportunities, everything from sales and marketing to health and wellness to software development to legal and accounting. Think of all the infrastructure that makes traditional sports work, right? Mm-hmm. You've got licensing and media rights and merchandising and the stadiums, and then add all the infrastructure that make video games work, which includes, audio engineering and level design and story, all those art pieces. Combine those together, and that's the real professional career opportunity in esports.
Yeah. Have you seen, is there any groups? I've seen that there's esports for colleges. Like I've seen colleges like where they actually like will straight get on buses and go to places and support the local things. Have you seen any like educational programs around esports for like colleges or other ways that vocational programs for esports at all?
There are different groups spawning up around that. It's, the ecosystems. Stop that. It's called Scholastic Esports. And the middle school and high school arena, there's a company called Generation Esports. They have a middle school esports league, MSEL, and a high school esports league, HSEL. And I think they're trying to get into the collegiate space, but predominantly they're focused on K through 12. Then you have other companies like Play Versus, which is also in the high school and collegiate space, and different organizations. Another one called Community. It's in the higher ed space for HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. See, you're gonna hurt yourself. Be careful.
I want to tell you,
groups.
There's a game on Steam called Who's Your Daddy, and the name of the game is actually a thing where you have a baby, a small child, and they run around and they try to murder themselves, and then you try to not have the baby die. So they run into the oven and you got to go save them, and they disappear and they go somewhere and they grab a fork and they try to run it in there and they do the whole thing. And it's a really fun game as you run around with each other. One of my best friends, his wife is just pregnant right now, is about to have a baby, and as I see you, as you're saying, like, you're gonna hurt yourself, that just triggered in my head. I don't know if you've seen it all on Steam, but
I didn't play it, but I heard about it. I believe that's another indie game. You know, that's one of the things I love about indie game developers is that they're focused more on niche, creative, novel experiences and less about mass market appeal. That's not something, and if it is from a AAA publisher, then I'll eat those words. But that's not the type of experience I would expect from, you know, a Microsoft or an EA or, you know, Nintendo.
No. John called it a real-world parenting simulator.
Yes.
That's pretty accurate, John. Yeah, it's just funny to see that, and it's just like you know, it's and you're right. What's great about, you have the balance, right? You have the wild west indie developers in any of these gaming spaces, and then you have the AAA people, and so all the experimenting goes on with the niches, and then other people see it and go, how do I make that into a AAA title? And that seems to be the kind of like the way those things work. I swear, Overworld has to be based off of another niche sports game of some kind coming out. I don't know.
That's where Fortnite came from, right? So I want to say it was DayZ. A DayZ mod created PUBG, and PUBG is from an indie studio called Bluehole Studios in South Korea. South Korea went to Epic Games and said, "Hey, we want to make this kind of battle royale concept, kind of like Hunger Games that supports 100 people, but your Unreal Engine won't support that. So can you make like X, Y, Z, like a laundry list of changes?" So Epic made those after they got paid, and they saw the success of PUBG. I don't know if you know that Fortnite had another mode. Like, if you ever, back in the day, if you log in, there was like the tower defense mode that nobody played. That was the actual first game. It was like Save the World or Heroes, something or the other. But nobody was playing that game. So Epic Games lifted all the assets, the characters, the levels, like all the assets into this gameplay experience. This gameplay experience, and created Fortnite.
Wow.
They never ended up giving away the tower defense for free. It's like, nobody's playing this game. Just make it free.
Yeah, man. That's a Valve move, though. That's something that Valve would do. Each person's kind of got their principles that they live by, you know.
Yeah.
And so I could see why Epic wouldn't do that. But yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's a terrifying thing about being a game creator in the space, is that you make something that has value, and then the big guys come in and look at it and go, "Great, you can't patent any of this," and then they make just a gigantic, more polished version of it and push it out there. There's no way to. Do you think that there's any ways in the future with blockchains and any of those things to be able to protect against stuff like that, or is it always going to be just the big fish will eat the small fish?
I think the blockchain will allow you to see who created the IP first, but then there's always the question of like, what is defensible IP, right? And the legal system has, I guess, decided that gameplay mechanics can't be patented.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny because part of that came up in this. There was a large legal battle. I want to say Bluehole Studios had $1 billion lawsuit against Epic Games. But it turns out, I don't know if you know this, Epic Games and Bluehole Studios are both portfolio companies for Tencent Games. So this is just my personal theory. I imagine that Tencent saw what's happening. It's like, why are you wasting all of our money in this legal battle? And we own both of you. Just like, cut it out, settle it. And coincidentally, they settled. Maybe Tencent had a place in that. Maybe they didn't, but for sure they settled.
Yeah. They came in and said, "You see all of this? This is mine. What are you doing? Knock that off."
Right. Exactly.
It's a good move. So then, what do you like in terms of you and building out the company that you're building out right now? what's your really holy grail with this? What would you like to see happen with what you're trying to build and bring to the esports community?
I don't know. Are you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk? Gary V?
I know him a bit. I don't know. I don't follow him a ton.
So he's popular in the startup ecosystem, sports betting. He actually is a co-owner of a Call of Duty team up in Minnesota. He was famously quoted as saying he believes that every business should be a media company that sells a particular product or service. So you should be a media brand and you sell beers or movie tickets or whatever. My team takes that philosophy further and says that every business should be a gaming company. Every business should be a gaming company that sells a product or service. And you should be able to use video games to authentically engage your community the same way you would with social media or email. So what my vision is to be able to empower businesses of any size to use games that are relevant to their product or service to engage, monetize, and retain. Yeah, I see. Thank you for putting that blue stuff everywhere. To acquire, engage, retain, and monetize their communities. Manny, stop it. That's rude.
Yeah. So then it's finding, and so it's not necessarily, they don't actually have to go and build the game, but they can go find like-minded people in the ecosystem, partner with them, and really connect with them through the power of gaming. The same way that's almost that there's kind of like brands are into the movie business now, and they find the right movie business, and they connect with you. This is the joys of parenting, my friend.
This is live. This is unscripted, completely unscripted. Yeah,
I enjoy myself.
I think that companies don't have to be in the business of making their own game in order for them to leverage video games as an engagement resource and strategy.
Yeah. So then it's how do they go about finding in gaming, or what do you think would be the steps and strategy? Is it reach out to you? Is it
That is that shameless plug. That's the answer. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but my last business was a multimedia search engine exclusively for indie games. We built it to digitize word of mouth marketing to solve game discovery. Today, game discovery is still the biggest problem and opportunity in the global gaming industry. And so I know for a fact, having been boots on the ground, working in the trenches with these indie developers and micro influencers, that nobody knows how to find the next game. Like, we created a algorithm, if you will. It wasn't digital, but like a workflow to identify them consistently. But the average business and person and business executive, small, medium business, large business, can't do that because there are 1.3 million video games in the industry.
Wow, I did not know that. So then it's just finding a way, either through certain search engines or your offers, to really just connect and make these win-win scenarios. Do you have any use cases? Do you have any examples of either other brands partnering externally from you or with you in general, and what the results were from being able to actually connect with their audience?
Our textbook example and my favorite is Dead Cells. Are you familiar with Dead Cells? Stop that. Stop.
Dead Cells. I'm not familiar with Dead Cells.
Dead Cells won the 2018 Action Game of the Year award at the Game Awards. It's from an formerly indie developer in France called Motion Twin. My brother and I discovered them around 2015, 2016, early 2016, and mid 2016. Man, stop it, that's rude. Okay, go play with the sparkles over there on the couch. It's so fun. I bet you'll have so much fun. Can you make a couch pillow tent? Go make a fort. Can you go make a pillow fort? I tried.
It's all good, man. It's all good.
We discovered them in 2016, supported their early access launch. They actually wrote a letter of recommendation thanking us for our support and identifying us as a value partner for any indie studio looking to make a splash in the industry. And then they went on to win the Action Game of the Year award 2 years later. They've recently sold 5 million units worldwide. We don't take any credit for them making an amazing game or them getting the distribution, but we did help them at a critical point in their journey to rise above the noise. Yes. Thank you. Okay, you look sparkly too. Please, can you go over there and play?
So the part is this: it's like you can make a great game, but getting discovered is a challenge. So finding the right people to promote you, to market you, to get that out there. It's not as it's a lot of people have the idea in any space, any entrepreneurial startup space. If I build it, they will come, right? And and really it's the selling of the thing is more important than the thing itself, or at least getting eyeballs so that people can test and try to get that stuff out there. So do you have advice for indie game developers on ways to get more eyeballs? Is there any thoughts you had around that for people, the 1.8 million games that are out there on how to get to the top of the
Yeah, aside from working with MetaArena, and we'd be glad to give them turnkey support for esports so they can focus on their game and let us handle everything else on the esports side, I would recommend going to micro influencers. And that could be streamers or smaller publications, because everybody's strapped for time, right? If you get publications on 3 or 4, or published on 3 or 4 smaller sites and with 3 or 4 smaller micro influencers, then the person that step up above will start to see that, right? Because of all the activity it's getting. And then that's how your game gets picked up there, and it becomes kind of a snowball. So that's what we were able to do, was like build some key relationships in the indie space with smaller publications, and we built a community so that when we would share a game, the community would just spike it in visibility. That's
cool. Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. You want to get that small domino to knock down the bigger domino, and then to move down the steps from there. What do you think are some of the more powerful platforms for community building for the game?
Daddy, please stop yelling. What are the more powerful platforms for what?
Yeah.
Yes, Maddie. How can I help you?
I'm working.
You're working? Okay. Can you go work over there in the corner? You're really close to me right now, and everybody can hear you. We want you to keep working, but just go work over there.
No, I won't.
You're working? Okay, go ahead.
Man, I remember visiting my niece and nephew for the holiday season, and I'd have the door shut because I was trying to do work. And my niece, she'd slide these notes in the door, and she's like, "Are you working? Yes or no?" I'm like, "Yes." And she goes, "Can you come out and play?" I was like, "No." And she goes, "Why not?" And so we had these back and forth communications where I'm just sliding things underneath the door with her, and it was covered in sparkles and all that jazz. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm just getting hardcore flashbacks from the situation. So yes, bringing it back in terms of things that people can do to community platforms when it comes to connecting right now. What do you think are some of the best platforms to create a community in the gaming space?
I think Twitch. Sorry, not Twitch. Well, Twitch. There are people who do that really well. Personally, Twitter was great for us. When we first started back in 2013, we were looking around the landscapes like, where can we start this? Because there were just 2 of us. My brother building the site, and he put a booger on me. And me building the community. So we looked at Facebook, but Facebook at that point had become so hyper-focused on monetizing businesses that if you couldn't pay to boost your post, no one knew any of your content exists. And that's still the problem today. But at the time, and maybe Twitter has gotten worse about that, but at the time, you could get a lot of organic visibility. Stop it. That is rude. I said that was rude. You can get a lot of visibility, organic visibility on Twitter by just posting amazing content. So I think if you stay community focused and especially support other people in your community, then not only can you get a larger funnel of content to share, but if you're supporting them, you're building those relationships so they would hopefully support you in the future.
Yeah. It's funny because like a lot of things in like the online space, like people just want to come in and just get a ton of awareness, but unless you really have got the relationships and you've built the value and you actually, because it's a community of people. And if you just come in, it's like a drive-by promotions, it's like, hey, buy my stuff. And you're like, what was that about? It seems very hard. So I feel like one thing that sounds like you're doing is that you're building out the community now and you're building out the environmentals now. So instead of them focusing on that you kind of have these, what sounds like, and I'm correct me wrong, like these turnkey solutions to help with the community generation and the ecosystem for the tournaments. Is that correct?
That's close to it. So we're bringing in these brands, right? Because we're creating these turnkey esports operations for brands as well, right? So they can just plug in their brand and start to activate their existing community. But because they're bringing their communities in, now we have an audience for these amazing games. So we can, and we're, as we continue to scale it, we'll create ways to integrate with other platforms so that visibility that's on our platform bleeds into and integrates into other ecosystems.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the biggest mistakes that esports games make when they come to market?
I think the focus on the hyper competitive side, again, is the biggest mistake in the ecosystem because it's naturally exclusive. So, and if you think about, and they're doing that because they don't really know any better, because all of the major investors in esports right now are former, current people from the sports ecosystem. But when you think about, again, varsity sports and intramural sports, it's naturally exclusive. You have to be the top 0.01% of athletes at, let's say, University of Kentucky to be on the varsity basketball team. Even if you want to be on the intramurals, you still have to be fairly athletic to compete and be successful there. So if you take that same model and apply it to video games, it's even more exclusive. Rocket League only has 3 players, right? A basketball team might have like 20, men or women on the roster, and football might have 50 to 100. Rocket League has 3.
Yeah. So it's too exclusive. So then it's kind of like what you're talking about with a knockout cities. Is you want to make it accessible for people to kind of get up and going, and so that they can kind of get in and play, but then have some sort of, easy to understand, difficult to master situation going on that allows you to kind of step into it. Yeah, that's super cool. That makes a lot of sense. So with that being said, is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them how to get a hold of you and what you and more about what you do?
Yeah, go visit our website at www.metarena.gg. We're excited to announce some really cool partnerships in the next few weeks. I also have a podcast I run called Eat for Life, and we run that every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. It's live stream on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch.
Nice.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to get out of me, I'm Marcus Esports Howard, both on LinkedIn and on Facebook. My middle name is not legally Esports, but it's great for SEO.
That's some good pro tip advice there, Marcus. Awesome, brother. Hey, thank you so much for your time. Tell Maddie I appreciate her company as well. Have a beautiful and glorious day, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care, Howard.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye now. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening. See you on the